Good evening and welcome to the Adobe Dam Desert Hills Apache Wash Area Drainage Master Plan, virtual public meeting. My name is Flor Mason, Communications and Public Involvement Coordinator with WSP. I will be facilitating the meeting this evening on behalf of the Flood Control District of Maricopa County. We have a lot of important information to share with you this evening, including an exciting online interactive survey that you can participate called Social Pinpoint. In this survey, you will be able to share your comments and upload photos of flooding concerns in your area. Throughout the evening, you will notice messages in the chat box that will provide information about the study, the project website, and how you can participate in the live Q&A session at the end of this presentation. Community members are encouraged to participate live as we move into the Q&A presentation towards the end, which will be approximately 30 minutes from now. As we move into the Q&A portion of this presentation, there are a few ways you can participate live in the question and answer session. If you are joining us through Zoom this evening, you can select the raise hand function to ask a question, or you can type it in the Q&A box that appears on your screen. If you are joining us by phone, you will be able to participate by pressing *9 on your telephone keypad. The question and answer session will take place at the end of the presentation, but feel free to type in your questions throughout the presentation. All questions in both the Q&A box and those individuals that have their hands raised will have their questions answered at the end of the presentation live by the study team. Only our presenters this evening will appear on the videos. The presentation is being recorded, will be posted on the project webpage, and will be available for viewing in the following days. That website is Maricopa/ADDHAW. I would like to take a moment to introduce to you the study team that is in attendance this evening. Study team, please turn your cameras on at this time. Joining us this evening from the Flood Control District of Maricopa County, we have Todd Williams, Project Manager, Hassan Mushtaq, Planning Branch Manager, Angela Clipper, Community Outreach Coordinator, Lisa Bleiler, Information Outreach Support Manager, Stephanie Schreiber, Planner Associate. We also have with us in attendance Jeff Brownell, Team Project Manager from Kimley Horn, and Jay Hicks, Landscape Architect from Dig Studio, Inc. Additionally, we'd like to recognize our project partners, the Town of Cave Creek, the City of Phoenix, and the City of Glendale. On behalf of the study team, we welcome you and we thank you for joining us this evening. And now I'll pass it on to Todd Williams to begin tonight's presentation. Todd?
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome. We certainly appreciate you taking some time out of your evening to listen in to us today. As Flor mentioned, we are recording this presentation, so we will kind of be posting that information to the website, and there will be the opportunity for follow-up well after this presentation. So if you know neighbors that have not had the opportunity to attend this meeting, they will be able to actually view the recording and can still participate. So again, thank you for spending the time with us this evening. So just want to quickly go over our agenda for today. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background on the Flood Control District of Maricopa County, the various project partners that are part of this effort. We will also talk about the study area, give you an overview of what all is involved in the study, talk about the project timeline, where we are currently and where we plan on ending up, and then getting into some of the next steps. And then, as was mentioned, opening up for the question and answer session at the end. And sorry, just to kind of go back to my role, my name is Todd Williams. I'm the project manager representing the Flood Control District of Maricopa County. So I'm managing this project on behalf of the district, working with our consultant team. So just to give you a bit of the background on the flood control district, this was an entity that was established in 1959. It's essentially a political subdivision of the county. And the overall intent is that we help reduce county residents' risks of injury, death, and property damage due to flooding. There are 4 key programs that we have that really help us focus on this. Education, so such as our event this evening, we're going out to the public, we're educating folks on what we are doing with these various studies. We are identifying some of those flood hazards, and then looking at regulation, regulating the floodplains, and then looking at mitigation. So part of this study tonight that we're going to be talking about, we are working towards that mitigation aspect of where we can help you, the residents, deal with flooding. Now, as many of you know, Maricopa County is a very big county. You know, it currently has a population of more than 4 million people. It's a pretty large area, 9,200 square miles, representing 25 municipalities. We have quite a range in elevation, and there is 70% public land. And typically the average annual rainfall ranges from 7 to 10 inches. And there are 8 major rivers within the county itself. So one of the key points I want to bring up with respect to the size of the county, it's hard for us to know everything that is going on out there. So this is the importance of us interacting with you, the general public, and we definitely seek your input to help guide us on where folks are observing flooding out within the county. You know, this slide's a little bit more detail, taking a look at what the role of the flood control district of Maricopa County is. You know, we identify flood hazards and risks. This is done through floodplain delineation studies, looking at various watersheds, area drainage master studies. So for example, tonight we are talking about a certain watershed within the county, which obviously may impact all of you. Looking at regulating development, ensuring that things that are built are safely built and there's no adverse impact to other folks within the county. And then looking at ways to mitigate flood hazards. So this is done in the past, it's primarily been done through structural means as the primary focus, but there are also opportunities for non-structural mitigation. Next slide, please. You know, as was touched on, Flor had introduced our project partners, and these are a number of them. So we do have Kimberly Horn. So Jeff Brunell is going to be taking over the presentation here in a minute. He's the project manager on behalf of our consultant team. And of course, we have key members, the town of Cave Creek, City of Phoenix, and City of Glendale. Obviously, we can't do this on our own. It's a very broad geographic area. So it's important we get the input of all our key project partners. And again, that also includes you, the general public. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff Brunell, our project manager for our consultant team. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd. First, I just want to say thank you to you all for participating tonight. It's we appreciate you and your efforts and your time, and you're a valuable part of the success of this study, and that you're the residents that are affected by it. And we want to hear your input, and that will make the study a better study at the end of the day. So I'm going to talk about the specifics of this particular study, and starting with some of the geographic characteristics. The study area, as you can see on the screen here, is about 145 square miles. So it's a very large study area, and this is one of the larger studies that the Flood Control District has done. It incorporates several jurisdictions, including the City of Phoenix, which is in yellow here on this map, unincorporated Maricopa County in white, the town of Cave Creek in this kind of orange color, and then a little bit of City of Glendale down here in the southwest corner in this gold color. The majority of the land ownership in this study area is private, about 42%, but there's also considerable state trust land, Tonto National Forest, and county parks. And then an interesting stat here is that about 11% of this study area has an existing FEMA floodplain on it. And you can see all those outlined here in blue. Most of those are riverine, and that's kind of a wash scenario, and that's in the light blue. And then the darker blue are ponded areas, and those are mostly behind embankments or behind the dam structures. So here's an overview of what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about some of the previous studies that were completed, the reason for this study, goals of the study. I'm going to get into the hydrologic and hydraulic modeling a bit, and then what we do with that modeling by identifying hazards and risks, and then solutions and recommendations, and then some other potential end products. And then I'm going to finish up before I hand it back over to Todd, and we're going to look at some of the preliminary results. So starting with previous studies, there were a couple of what we call watercourse master plans completed for Cave Creek and Skunk Creek, and those are two of the major washes in this study area, and those focus kind of on the wash corridors. There was also a previous, what we call area drainage master plan, the Adobe Dam Desert Hills Area Drainage Master Plan, completed in 2004. And that's explicitly what this study that we're embarking on now is updating. The end result of the Adobe Dam Desert Hills ADMP, or Area Drainage Master Plan, was new floodplain delineations, voluntary buyouts of flood-prone structures, and then development guidelines that helped kind of steer future development and reduce flood risk within those new developments. You'll notice what's not on this list is projects per se, as there were projects identified as part of that study, but a lot of them were not implemented, mainly because of funding constraints. So that's one thing we'll be looking at as part of this study, but there's a few other things or reasons why we're doing this study. One is that this area has experienced significant growth since 2004 with other changes to the watershed. So we want to make sure that we can quantify how those changes have affected flood risk. There has also been a number of significant flooding events that have occurred since then, namely 2007, 2010, 2014, and then as recent as this last summer, so less than a year ago, the Desert Hills and New River areas experienced some pretty good flooding in late summer of 2021. We're also employing new technology that would include LiDAR mapping. So LiDAR is a method to acquire elevation data for the study area that's very dense, very detailed, and we were able to use that to model the study area in a lot of detail, a lot more detail than we ever could in the past. Coupled with that, we use 2D modeling now for our hydrology and hydraulics, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. But it discretizes, or it divides up the watershed in very small slices so we can really zero in on flood hazards. And then finally, rainfall data is always changing. It's always getting updated. And so we want to use the current rainfall data as well as an update to this study. So the goals of the study are to reduce flood risks for residents and the community, as Todd talked about. And we do that in two different ways. The first way is to identify the flood hazards and risks through data collection and modeling, and that's why we're here tonight, to talk with you all and collect that anecdotal data that's so important to us for calibrating our models, because the models are only as good as the on-the-ground data, and if we can get that real-world experience, it really helps us create a better product. But then once we do that and identify our hazards, what do we do with that data? Well, that's where we identify our problem areas and then start to develop those solutions. One thing I want to note here is that not all flooding creates problems. Flooding that occurs in an environment where there's not development is a natural process, and that's something we don't worry about. That's part of Mother Nature, right? It's only when we interface with that flooding through development or transportation or whatnot, that those problems are created, and that's what the problems that we want to solve. So that goal of reducing flood risks to the residents and the communities that we work in, one way we do that is through what we're doing tonight, and that's increased public awareness. And so that risk awareness just inherently reduces risk, right? If you know about the risk, you can take actions or behaviors that mitigate that risk. And that's one of our main goals for these studies, is to let you all know what we're doing. And we do that through public outreach, through meetings, and then through developing map products and other resources that you can access online, or in our meeting scenarios where we can go through it with you all. So to talk a little bit about how we do this in the hydrologic and hydraulic sense through the modeling process. Like I said, we take that 145 square miles and we divvy it up into 15-foot grids. And so there's over 16 million grids in our study area. And each one of those grids has unique properties associated with it, elevation and other properties, such that we can calculate unique water depths, velocities, and flow directions for each one of those grids. And so it's a really powerful tool for understanding how flooding is happening. These models can be revised and updated in the future as development occurs, or other changes. And they're used for design, and they're used for planning new development and infrastructure by developers, by the cities, by other interested parties. And those end users, like I said, cities, engineers, and even homeowners. The homeowners is an interesting one in there, in that the flood control district displays these results on web viewers on their website for once the studies are completed, that anyone can access and really kind of drill down and look at their risk associated, or the risk adjacent to their property, or that may be impacting their property. So when we finish the modeling phase and we start to identify our hazards and risks, we look at those hazards as they're associated with houses and buildings, but also in undeveloped areas, because we want to get out ahead of development, define the hazards so that that new development can come in and build appropriately and not create more headaches, more problems, more flood risk in the future, right? And an interesting stat here is that 30% of all flood insurance claims are outside FEMA's map floodplains. And so all the flood risks are not defined, and those flood risks can really occur anywhere. Another important aspect of these studies is, especially in areas like Desert Hills and New River, where not every wash crossing has a bridge or a culvert, there's a lot of at-grade crossings, as we want to know where those wash crossings are that put motorists at risk. You all know, I'm sure, of where they are better than we do at this point. And those are something that are significant. And we, every year in Arizona and elsewhere, folks get stuck and worse in those areas. And so that's something that we want to identify and help educate folks about as part of these studies. And then another one is erosion and sediment deposition hazards. We can take the data that we generate as part of this modeling process, and we can calculate erosion potential. And so that's where roads might get undermined, or pools might get undermined, or washes may move around and put structures at risk. And we can also calculate sediment deposition. So that would be important for road crews for their maintenance programs, and understanding how much maintenance is going to have to occur after large storm events. And so these are used, as you can see, as part of planning efforts and part of that risk aversion. And then comes the solution and recommendation phase. And the solutions, we scale the solutions from big regional structural solutions that benefit large areas, have a large cost benefit ratio, so they can, you can quantify that it's helping a lot of people, but have big price tags, right? So these are projects that the flood control district may look to partner with the agencies to help fund. These may be long-term projects. These may be out on the horizon pretty far because of that funding constraint. But then we also like to look more local and identify local solutions that are easily implementable, that the cities can program as part of their capital improvement projects, or road maintenance projects and that sort of thing. And there are also there's other funding mechanisms that help cities cost share with those. But then we'd like to take it even down further, and we like to take it down to the individual property owner level, where we can help you all figure out how to mitigate flooding on your property, on your individual property, such that it fixes flooding or mitigates flooding and doesn't create an adverse impact with your neighbors, either upstream or downstream. And those are the things that we like to do. And it's important for a study like this that has a large area like Desert Hills and New River, where development is kind of single lot and there's not a lot of infrastructure associated with the land as it's subdivided and that sort of thing. And this is what some of those end products look like that are at that individual lot level. The Flood Control District publishes guides for property owners that kind of walk through some of the techniques that you can employ on your properties, and have diagrams like this one that really help to store stormwater, let it infiltrate into the ground and reduce the risk around your property. And so with that, I am going to dive into some of those preliminary results I talked about. I do want to note that these are preliminary. These maps will change, so take these with a grain of salt. These are not the final products by any means, so don't look for your property and see if you can tell if you're going to flood or not. But I wanted to show you these because this kind of highlights the level of detail that we're actually generating as part of these studies. Like I said, we take this watershed and we divvy it up into 15-foot grids. And so every 15-foot grid on here has a unique flood value, depth, velocity, that sort of thing. And you can kind of see that in these results, in that these are color coded by flood depth, by max flood depth for a 100-year event. But you can see areas where there's deeper flooding, shallower flooding, and you can really see the level of detail with the washes. And this is in the upper watershed. This is New River area, Skunk Creek, with some of the tributaries coming into Skunk Creek. And then as we walk down, this is kind of going now down through Desert Hills, adjacent to Anthem, Skunk Creek again, and then through Tremonto, down south of Carefree Highway, and then finally over the CAP under the I-17, over, through that spillway that I'm sure a lot of you drive over every day, and then finally into the Adobe Dam flood pool. And so that's not all the study area. That's just a portion of it. I wanted to show you kind of just an example of our results. Finally, before I turn it back over to Todd, this is what our project timeline looks like currently. We are in this first phase, data collection, and the preliminary modeling phase. We expect to have that done and completed as part of the detailed model results this summer. And then from there, we'll transition into that problem identification phase in the fall. And we hope to have some solutions ready to roll out in the winter or spring, early spring of this coming year and next year. So winter 2022 and spring 2023. And that's when we anticipate having the next public meeting. And at that public meeting, we'll roll out these results, we'll roll out these potential solutions, and want your feedback on what you would like to see in your neighborhoods or in your area of the study as part of the solution implementation. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Todd.
All right, thank you, Jeff. So just to get into the next steps where we kind of go from here, as Jeff had touched on, data collection is ongoing. And again, this is where we seek your assistance. If you have photos or videos or other information related to flooding incidents, we definitely want to hear about it. As we touched on stakeholder coordination and public outreach, this is just one meeting. We will have a future meeting, as Jeff touched on, but we definitely want this to be ongoing and continuous throughout the study. So there will be my contact information that, if you want to reach out to me, I'd be happy to chat with you or send me an email, whatnot. And those are all issues that I can get our consultant team to take a look at. We are, as Jeff mentioned, we're going to continue to refine this model We expect sometime this summer we will get to that point where we have a more detailed model, and then taking a look at problem identification in later on this fall, and then moving to the solutions in the end of this study, sort of winter of this year and spring of the following year. So that's kind of where we're at in terms of next steps. But again, we definitely encourage folks to continue to provide feedback. Next slide, please. Yeah, so as I touched on, we definitely want to hear from you. That project website is going to be key for any of the communications we have around this study. So I'm posting everything from the postcards to the posters to fact sheets. This presentation will be posted. It is being recorded, so this will be posted on that website as well. We do ask that folks complete the survey. We have social pinpoint. It's basically a survey which will ask you some basic questions. You have the ability to upload photos through that survey. And then there's also a map where we encourage you, if you know of flooding problems, please put a location on the map where you're actually observing those flooding issues, because that allows us to go out in the field, conduct the research, and sort of ground truth these detailed models that Jeff and his team are putting together. And then of course, my contact information there, you can either email me or call me at the Flood Control District, and we can go from there. And if you have the opportunity, you can put your cell phone up to this QR code, and that will take you directly to the survey link. If you don't have a chance to kind of capture that right now, if you go back to the project website, all of this information is posted there. So there is a quick link where you can click on that quick link once you're on the project website. That will take you into the survey itself, and then that gives you the opportunity to kind of provide us feedback through that method. And again, one of the important things is we do have the mapping component that's part of this whole social pinpoint aspect that definitely helps us focus in where we need to.